It's time for your story on Saints Media.
Well, it's great to be doing this again here, and I'm privileged to have David Beard with us today. We really like to explore stories and hear people's stories and their journeys that they've gone through. The Bible says that we have two weapons against the enemy: the word and the testimonies of the saints. We do such a good job a lot of times of the word, but sometimes we do a little bit we fall short in telling people's story. And so we just want to take some segments here in the next little while just to reflect on some people's stories, some journeys they've gone through. And David's one of those stories we want to highlight. And David, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks, Pastor Randy.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, we go back a little ways. I know I'm new here at the church, but we go back to, I think we figured out to be 2009, and you were in grade 10, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So you were in grade 10, so everyone can do the math, figure that out. But I was the youth pastor over at the Park Church here in Sherwood Park, and our lives kind of connected, and then we kind of went different ways. And now, after so many years, now we're kind of connecting back together. But we have some great stories. I know there's lots of great, crazy memories. I remember like laser tags, all nights, missions trips, just a few, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun and a lot of growing. So yeah,
some stories we'll share and some stories we probably won't share. But anyways, just great to have you here today. I know a lot of times people hear stories and. Especially like in the Facebook world, we get to, show our triumphs, and we get to put all of our great pictures. And you've had some amazing triumphs. I won't give too many away, but I remember following you, even when I was in Ontario, and just celebrating some of the great victories you've had and been highlighting in life. But through that too, there's also the other side of life, the real side of life that we don't a lot of times make too public, and I know that we all kind of have different journeys, all of us, and so, I just want to talk with you about your story. This segment's called Your Story, and the very purpose of that is just to kind of let us hear about your story. So why don't you share a little bit about your testimony?
Yeah, for sure. Well, being that I work as a big church, and I might be a stranger to a few people, but like Pastor Randy said, my name's Dave. I've been attending WECA for about 5 years now. My wife and I have two little boys. One's Daniel, and one's name's Bennett, 3 weeks old. So fresh out of the oven. So we've been having a lot of fun with Bennett, and it's been good. We've been there for 5 years. We kind of got connected through my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and it's been our latest home, and we've really been enjoying it. But my story obviously goes back a lot longer than 5 years ago. So I kind of grew up in the church. My parents raised me in various different churches as we moved a bunch. My dad was an RCP, or is still an RCP, and so we moved a bunch. But kind of started off in BC and worked our way through Grand Cache, and then down to Olds, and then to Sherwood Park, and now my wife and I have set up shop in Edmonton. But yeah, we've been to a variety of different churches, including several in Sherwood Park, where we connected. It's been a staple in my life is the church. But if I'm being honest with you, my personal relationship with Jesus didn't really start till I was about 15 years old. It was pretty superficial up until that point. So I kind of, like I said, I grew up in church, loved the worship, loved being with friends at youth group, even prior to Sherwood Park and stuff like that, but didn't really build any personal foundation with Jesus before kind of getting to Sherwood Park and getting connected with the youth group, actually with you, which was a pretty cool connection. So I really, the way I kind of describe it, I've been asked a few different times to share my testimony, and the way I describe it is, when I was in school, had you asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I go to church every Sunday. That's my thing. Like that's what I do." But in no way, shape, or form had I taken any serious time to reflect on the sacrifice that Jesus has made for me and everyone else. And that didn't make a huge impact on my life. Not that I didn't stay out of trouble. I did. That was out of an earthly fear of disappointing my parents mostly, but it was what it was. Yeah. So that was kind of the rudimentary side of things, but it was, I remember specifically we had a prayer night at the park pen. We remember watching some movies and hanging out, doing some activities and time of prayer. And I remember thinking through that, and there were some pretty powerful experiences there that kind of caught my attention. But I remember actually specifically, we did a Bible study, and it was actually at a Dairy Queen across the street. And Pastor Joel was going through, I think it was Philippians, if I do recall, but I can't be certain. And we were asking some pretty big questions about theology and basically reflecting, I think it was on the way that Paul was describing his situation, obviously in prison. And for whatever reason, it hit me, and those questions were rolling in my mind for a long time after that. And I remember going home and talking to my parents and said, wow, you guys, like, we had some really big questions that were kind of brought up at youth group. And I was pretty floored. I was like, what are the answers to these questions? And I can't remember what they were, but I remember my dad specifically, his reaction was kind of working me through some of the surface level stuff. And he said, listen, we're not pastors. We don't have all the answers, but maybe it's time you go sit down with your pastor and go ask some questions and find these things out for yourself. And so up until that point, really, I could give you some basic answers on who Jesus was and what he's done for us. But he didn't really have a huge impact on my heart. And so I did some thinking. And at the time my family was attending Bethel Lutheran Church, great church. And I ended up sitting down with Pastor Matt there and had a really, really good, solid talk over a coffee. And it was not a specific incident after that, but it was shortly thereafter that I gave my life to Christ and said, this is the guy who I thought he was all along, and now I officially want to become his best friend. Nice. So, it was kind of during that time in my life where I was kind of having some self-discovery and being around a solid group of people, both at the park and in Bethel, and being challenged in school and in sports was very foundational time in my life, and that was kind of where my faith became real instead of just on Sundays. So that's
good. Now, one thing I remember about you is we were going to go on a missions trip to Belize, and a few weeks before the trip, you got a letter inviting you to a scout camp.
That's right. Yeah.
Sitting down, having coffee with you, and you said, "What should I do? This is my one chance. I mean, this is what I've been dreaming for. This is what I've been longing for, to play football my whole life. But I've been committed to go to this missions trip." And then you basically were trying to get me to make that decision for you. And I remember specifically saying, well, I can't tell you what to do because, this is a decision you have to make. And so maybe what decision did you make, and how did that develop? What happened after that?
Yeah, so that was my first, in my mind, official testing of my faith. Like you said, I'll give you a bit of a backstory here. In high school, I was a basketball nut. That's what I loved to do. I wanted to do it. I wanted to be just like my dad. I wanted to be able to play college basketball, and that was my thing. And I happened to play football on the side, and it was fun and good. But really, I was just doing it to kind of fill my time, and I still enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And so as I kind of went through high school, I figured out that I wasn't going to go to the NBA, which was quite a surprise to me. I thought for sure I was going to go to the NBA. And I realized that I actually had an opportunity with football. And so I decided that I wanted to try and focus my time on creating an opportunity to be able to play some football post-secondary and be able to get an education. And I just so happened to be walking out of practice one day, and this fella in this blue jacket was passing me in the parking lot. I was picking up some bags from the practice field and I was bringing them back to the locker room and hey, who are you? I'm Dave. He's like, why weren't you at the meeting? I said, what meeting are you talking about? He said, the recruiting meeting, the grade 12 recruiting meeting. Why aren't you there? I didn't know about it. Wasn't told about it. So turns out I was neglected to get invited to a recruiting meeting to the University of British Columbia. And so the recruiting coach came over to our school and was connecting with the grade 12s who had the possibility of going on to post-secondary. And he said, okay, give me your email. Like, I'll contact you. I said, okay, great. This is my first and only real opportunity to play some football after high school. And so I was kind of bummed and kind of excited at the same time. I realized that, well, I was completely forgotten about or chosen not to be part of this opportunity. But then I was also excited because I made a connection and I was able to possibly carry on a conversation. Needless to say, that carried on. Ended up getting an offer from the University of British Columbia to come sign a letter of intent, go to camp, go try out, and potentially make the team. And that was maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks right after I had committed to going on a mission trip to Belize with you. YC Belize set that up for the first year.
Yeah.
And of course, I was so excited for both of those things and was totally not excited for the clash of schedules. So I realized I had a problem, and I ended up praying and thinking and talking to some grandparents, talking to you, and trying to figure out, well, like, what's important here. And it was like, in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, it all worked out for the great, and God's hand was totally ministering in my life. But it was pretty scary at the time. Like, that was my only scholarship offer, and I decided to pass up on it. I committed to this Belize trip already, and if I was going to miss the spring camp, it wasn't going to stop me from going to school. It was just going to be one obstacle kind of in the way. And so God kind of walked me through that and totally rewarded me in a really special way. And I ended up getting an invitation to the University of Alberta to stay home and play football here in the city. Shortly thereafter, after I'd committed, I can't remember if it was after I had, or before the trip or after the trip to Belize, but either way, it was after I'd already made the decision. No, I'd made this commitment to God that I'm going to go serve and learn and grow, and yeah, He totally rewarded me with another opportunity. So
yeah, no, I remember it was like a couple weeks after you got back, you came into the office and you're like, you would never believe what happened. And it was
yeah,
crazy.
So yeah, it was a pretty special moment for me. Definitely a stepping stone in my faith for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So then just for those that maybe not have followed football much, what happened after you started going to university here in Alberta? What went forth after that?
Well, off the football field, my faith was totally challenged and skyrocketed when I went to university. I got involved with Athletes in Action, which is so incredible. Such an amazing organization that I'm still affiliated with today. I kind of transitioned from the campus ministry at U of A into the pro ministry with the CFL. And without spilling too many beans too early, I kind of worked my way through at U of A, transitioning a bunch of different positions and working through trying to learn what life is like living on your own. And ended up getting drafted my fourth year to Edmonton in the second round and of the CFL draft in 2015. And I've been with Edmonton ever since, and just signed up again this year for another extension. So we're still chugging along, enjoying the ride. So,
and you got a ring in your rookie year?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
people can say that.
It was a pretty special year, man. Like, married the girl of my dreams, got drafted. We won a Grey Cup. Yeah, it was a pretty awesome year. Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. No, that's great, man. And then, and so your position is center with the Eskimos, and last year your numbers were one of the strongest, not only in the league, but also for years. I mean, it was very solid. So did some awesome stuff. We're so proud of you, David. You know, not only what you're doing on the field, but also what you're doing off the field, you know, and just your life, and how God's has used you, but also how God's going to use you in the future, you know. So we just want you to know that we're behind you. We believe in you. Keep going forward. And if I was to say, what would be your life verse, a verse you live by, or one that's kind of pulled you through, or kind of what verse would that be?
Yeah, a staple verse that has kind of been at my side, kind of my whole life, has been James 1 verse 2, and that's "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds." And that's been revisited many times in my life, and never stops being as powerful as it was the first time I found it. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for joining us for this session of your story. We're going to have many more stories to come. David's just one of those stories that we're going to hear. And just thank you so much for your time, David. We'll stay in touch.
Thanks for having me. Take care.